Can you paint on cardboard? Really? Why not? That's what I say. Well, thanks for dropping in on the Robert Painter on YouTube. My name is Robert McAfee. That's two F's and two E's. You know, when I was a little kid, I wouldn't say we were poor, but frugal was probably a better word. I like to say that, my dad was a hard-working mechanic, and all those years at Mack Trucks in Toronto, my mom took care of us 6 kids, full-time job with overtime all by itself. But we didn't have a whole lot of luxury. We just had the basic essentials. And we had all the basic essentials. A good place to sleep, healthy food to eat every day, all that stuff. They made sure we were well looked after. It's a good thing, Well, one thing we didn't have was excess. And, as a kid, I really had to make do with things around the house. And I love to paint since I was 6 years old. I can tell you that's a whole long story all by itself, but I'll get into that another day of how that all started. But I loved to draw and paint, and I used to use just about whatever was around the house to use. An old piece of wood. I painted on some of my mom's furniture. Oh, that's another story. Sorry, Mom. But I learned to use materials that were available to me. That's the point. And I used house paint, a little 6-year-old kid, 10-year-old kid, painting pictures with house paint. And as I grew older, I learned that, it's okay to use found materials. In the abstract world, that's what they call it. Found materials, or found objects, or found substances, or whatever. And as a painter, I grew into a more mature method of painting with canvas and watercolor paper and whatever else. But one thing I learned is that you can paint on anything, and painting on cardboard, well, to demonstrate that here today, I started off by cutting a piece of cardboard that would be perfect to fit into one of my frames, 8 by 10. It's a nice little sketch size. And the white that you see on it was gesso. Painted a nice liberal layer of gesso on the surface. And basically what gesso does is it seals whatever surface you painted on, and keeps the paint from absorbing into that surface and causing it to break down. But the gesso also acts as a binding, like a glue, between that surface, whatever it is, and the paint. So now that we've got that established, and clearly you can see we're painting on a piece of cardboard, how great is that? I remember reading stories of some of my favorite artists. Well, like one of them was, of course, Tom Thompson. If you're Canadian, you know that we have the Group of 7 as part of our iconic folklore in this country. Well, they were more than folklore. They were real heroes of the art world, real game changers. And Tom Thompson was not really a formal member of the group, but he came along sort of alongside of them and was adopted as part of the family, shall we say. But he was very much an outdoorsman, and he went north from the city of Toronto, 2 or 3 hours to logging country, where he acted as a guide and a fisherman and what have you, and he stayed there for most of the summers. And while he was up there, he would have some boards that he brought from the city and maybe a few canvases, but after he ran out, well, Tom Thompson would use just about anything he could find. He was the master of found surfaces. I remember reading once that he broke up an old milk carton and used the panels from the sides to paint what are now multi-million dollar collectible, historically important paintings in Canada. Well, around the world, actually. Look it up. $1.5 to $2.5 million for an 8x10 Tom Thompson painted on a milk board. Art is just art. It's art on whatever surface. I mean, the cavemen painted on their stone walls. We just use whatever is available to us, no matter what your economic circumstance. And that's really my point with this demonstration: is art is not for the elite, and it's not painted by just the elite. In fact, most artists come along in very, very humble circumstances, and I'm one of them. I sometimes see beginning artists, and they have these very expensive easels and very expensive brushes and very expensive this and that and the other thing. And I kind of chuckle to myself because, most of us come from much humbler circumstances than that. And it's okay, because what we're really doing is we're creating art on whatever level we come from. Basquiat, after all, in New York, in the great abstract modern art era of, they call it the New York School in New York City. He didn't come from money, and he used a lot of found materials to work on. And as his work grew to the tens of millions of dollars, he continued to work on those kinds of materials. It didn't matter to him, and it doesn't matter to the collectors either. And I can tell you, it doesn't matter to me. As long as it's prepared properly with the gesso and, quality, I would say quality paints, that would be the next step. It would be good to work with quality paints, because then the colors will hold up and stand the test of time. But that's really it. Find your medium, find your groove, and get into it, and start painting. Don't let things hold you back. Rules and silly little artsy fartsy borders and fences that keep you from expanding into your own creativity. Make beautiful art on whatever it is you got. Don't let anything stop you. I never do. I paint on whatever happens to be around. Now, for me, it's mostly canvas. Like 90% of the time, it's canvas. And for a great part of the remainder of the time, I use birch boards. And I seal them either with gesso or with a varathane or a shellac, or I don't know, whatever. But you seal both sides of wooden boards. The reason why is because the board will bend if you don't. So you gotta seal both sides. And for the heck of it, I seal all around the edges too. I'm thorough that way. But anyway, once again, painting on whatever surface you like, it really doesn't matter. There's lots of artists today that paint on shoes. Imagine that. I never thought the time would come that running shoes would be such a hot commodity like they are now. Oh, they sure are. I mean, there are shoes that are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. I can't believe it. I can't believe anybody would spend more than $100 on a pair of shoes. And even that, I mean, running shoes, or sneakers as they call them in the States, right? The fact is they do. And there are artists that have gravitated to buying white sneakers or running shoes and painting their designs on the shoes. Now, isn't that cool? I mean, 50 years ago, that wouldn't have been seen as cool. That would have been dumb. That wouldn't have been art. That would have seemed like kind of wouldn't be very valuable in most people's eyes. But today, if you paint on a pair of white running shoes and come up with a very unique design, you've got a one-of-a-kind there, baby. And I'll tell you what, lots of artists are out there making tons of money doing that kind of thing. Have I made the point clear. I mean, paint on whatever you feel like painting on. That's really what it comes down to. And, to make it pleasant, I thought I'd choose this nice little river valley here. And this is in a place called the Ganaraska Woods, which is sort of north and east of where I live. I live in the Toronto area in Ontario, and that's in Canada. And that's in North America, by the way, in case you're from another planet. And the Ganaraska Forest is a great preserve where people can hike and ride bikes. And in the wintertime, they can snowshoe and all the rest of those fun things. But it's also a really perfect spot for painters. And it's pretty rugged because a lot of it's inaccessible without some serious effort. You got to have your really good walking shoes, hiking shoes, and a good backpack to carry your pieces of cardboard for painting on, or wood, or canvas, or whatever you got. Ganaraska Forest, beautiful place. And down there in the forest, there's a couple of streams and rivers, and this is one of them where the sides of the river just kind of bank down to the water. I personally like to make my sky a little on the darker blue, gray, kind of a dull tone, and the reason why I do that is because it makes the colors in the painting. It makes the colors of the foliage, the trees, the leaves on the ground. It makes those colors really pop when you kind of darken out the background a little bit like this. And I'll use a dark, kind of like a Van Dyke brown mixed with a little bit of Prussian blue, and I'll kind of tap down through those trees to get a pretty stark, dark outline on the trees, the edges, and then I'll get some titanium white and just kind of drag that over top, and you get this rugged birch tree kind of a look, which, well, that's exactly what I wanted. But you knew that, right? But that contrast of the dark and the light makes them pop. See that? It was a pretty flat painting before. It didn't have a lot of life. Now it's got some pop. And this painting is turning out okay, I think. Not bad. And I'll sign it, of course. Don't forget to sign your work. You want everyone to know who did it, when it's worth millions of dollars. There's my signature going in. And I really want to just take a moment to express my heartfelt thanks to all of you who are hanging out here and watching on the Robert Painter on YouTube. I would love it if you'd take another second to like and subscribe, because that way the YouTube gods, they're going to know that you watched. And that'll prompt them to show it to more people and show you future videos of the Robert Painter right here on YouTube. So also drop in on robertmcaffee.com. Hey, you can shop there. You can pick up some of my paintings on wood and on canvas and all those other great surfaces. Thanks for dropping in, folks. We'll see you next time on the Robert Painter on YouTube.